Hello, and welcome back to Venus Rising Season 4. I'm your host, Callie Fell. If you're joining us for the first time, welcome. All of our earlier seasons can be found on your favorite podcast platforms, such as iTunes. And if you've been following our show for some time, thank you for joining us again today. Today, we welcome a very special guest, Abel Garcia. Abel is an independent journalist and YouTuber and is here today to share his story as a male detransitioner. Abel is active on Instagram and Twitter and YouTube under the handle at official Abel G. I encourage you to follow him in each of these spaces. Abel, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you very much for having me today.
I had intended on giving some details of your transition and subsequent detransition in your introduction, but I thought that it was just best to come from you. So, if you don't mind, can we dive right in and talk about your story and how your story starts?
Sure, would you like for me to start in my childhood or just when I started to transition? Either
Wherever
or.
you feel is comfortable and wherever you think it's pertinent for our listeners to know about.
Sure, I'll start with my childhood then. So growing up, well, my parents came here illegally from Mexico, so they were always very busy. Here in the States, always working nonstop,
Mm,
trying to obviously support myself and themselves. Growing up, I wasn't really the most masculine child. I wasn't the most out there. I was more quiet, shy, timid, an introvert. And obviously, the fact that my dad was always working nonstop, I didn't really have a male role model figure. I was mostly raised by my grandparents.
mm,
So that probably had a part in my how it all came to this transgender ideology. Um, Obviously, because without my father in the picture, and I've always been an overthinker. I have, for some reason, I assume that if I'm not the most masculine boy, I must have been a girl.
mm.
Obviously, because I didn't know what the word transgender meant at the time, I just lived my life as a not so masculine boy growing up. So I didn't really figure out what the word transgender was until I'd say either late middle school or early high school, freshman year at the latest. Is when I found the word transgender. And when I found it, I thought, oh, that explains what I am.
Mm.
But obviously, I didn't act onto it until after I had left high school. And then it would just place a seed of thoughts, I guess I could say, in my mind. And all of high school, I thought about it, but like I said, never acted on it. Which, looking back now, I'm kind of glad I didn't do anything. Um, but eventually, I decided I wanted to transition, and and I told my mother that I wanted to transition in December of 2015. My mom was scared. She cried, asked so many questions, and I
Mm.
told her this is what I wanted to do. I asked her, "Do not tell my father." I assume she must have told my father, and that'll be important in a minute.
Yeah. How old were
Uh,
you in 2015, Abel?
I was 18.
18. Okay.
So March, if I'm correct, around March, early 2016, I went to see a therapist and I said, I think I might be transgender and I would like to see if I am or I'm not.
Mm.
This was in Southern California, south of LA.
What kind of
So
therapist? Do you know what kind of therapist?
she was a gender therapist, I
Okay.
believe. Um, I have to say I believe so because she worked at the local LGBT center.
Okay.
But so I went to seek her out, and I told her, "Hey, I think I might be transgender." And after let me see, it was not even long into the first session I had with her. She said, "Yes, I am a transgender woman."
Mm.
She had my letter to transition with hormones right away.
That same day, first visit.
Hmm.
Oh.
And she did not want to gatekeep me with my transition. I had asked her why she was so ready to transition, or for me to transition, when I was still trying to ask answers. She says, "Well, because you're obviously transgender.
Mm.
Well, those aren't her words verbatim, but it was around something like that. It's been many years.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I didn't transition right away. I told her I wanted to wait a little bit before I wanted to make sure everything was good,
Hmm.
just in case there was something else that was there besides actually being trans. I did not get the help that I needed. She only affirmed me in my transition, and that's the only thing she did. Um, a few months into therapy with her, was by the time my father must have found out that I was thinking about transitioning, and he took me to Mexico, and under the guise of he needed a second driver because he was going to be having surgery by getting a tooth pulled out, and he was going to be under so much medication,
Mm.
which he did, but um, he also did take me to a prostitute to try to cure me. Um, I I was only 19 at the time when that happened. Sorry, that
Yeah. Take
this
your
is
time.
this topic is a little hard
It's
for me.
hard. Yeah. Take your time.
It's easy to write about this, but it's so hard to talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But so when we finally went to Mexico after he was done with the doctor, my father, because we had left so early in the day to go to Mexico because it was just across the border. Um, I had an aide, he had an aide, so he told me if I was hungry, that was his way to take me to a prostitute.
Um,
I honestly just wanted to get the heck out of there, but I knew I couldn't just leave because
mhm.
unknowingly my father had already paid for everything and he was doing things behind my back.
Mm.
So eventually I picked one of the ladies. All of them leave but the one that I picked, and me and her just start walking towards the back. Obviously, by then all the red flags in my head were going off.
Right.
I
What was your
decided
relationship like with your father before this?
very strained. We didn't really see eye to eye. We always had issues.
Gotcha.
Uh, I was much closer to my mother before
Hmm.
then.
Which is why you felt comfortable telling your mother about feelings you were having. Yeah.
That is correct. So my dad starts talking to the woman, and they expected me to be near the door. Obviously, I ignored them and I stayed near a corner, and I just waited, listening to what they were saying because I was lied to, obviously.
Yeah.
And the thing that my dad mostly said that has stuck to my head since then, and he's obviously this was Mexico, this was all in Spanish, so I'll just translate it. So what he said to the prostitute was, "Take care of him. It's his first time."
Mm.
And I was like, "Wow, my dad is actually doing this to me." I do remember sitting on the table, scared, nervous, not knowing what's going to happen, and she just told me to strip naked. Obviously, because I thought I was trans by then, I was very shy of taking off my shirt in front of others, even my boxers. I didn't really like going naked or completely naked in front of other people who I didn't trust enough. But eventually she got me on the table, started giving
Hmm.
me a massage, and not long into it I realized that she was completely naked on top of me.
Mm.
Um I know I don't really recall much past we get into the bed parts.
Yeah, that's okay. We don't have to,
Yeah,
you don't have to recount the details.
yeah.
Um,
But what I do recall, obviously, I recall obviously not being able to perform
mhm,
because she was not someone I was interested in.
mhm,
And eventually our time ran out, and I by the time by the end of it, since I could not perform, I had told her, just like to my father, tell him that we did everything went great,
Mm-hmm.
best thing you've ever done. Obviously, lie to his face.
Mm.
Time eventually ran out. We both got dressed, and I walked out to my father. I lied to his face.
Yeah.
Prostitute covers for me, but obviously, I hated that. That traumatized me.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize it until after a few years. Not even the therapist who signed off on me to transition looked into this deeply, like, oh shit, you were traumatized by that. She only cared enough to put someone on the path to transition. But a few months after that, I finally accepted hormones. I moved out of my parents' home and I started the path to transition. Got hormones. Started them in November 2016.
Did you,
Everything. Go
sorry.
ahead.
No, sorry. Did you feel like you understood the risks of what you were about to undertake, or um, did anyone give you those risks?
No, nobody gave me any risk. I was told exactly what I wanted to hear.
Mm.
That I would become a woman with enough surgeries and hormones. Even when I went to the doctor who had to sign off on them, he said the same thing, and he even said, "I actually have a trans woman who's been transitioning for so many years. You can't even tell." And I said, "Oh, okay, I'll talk to her."
Mm-hmm.
Which is about that was a biological man, bad because
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really know. No, I said, "Yeah, I'll talk to this person." Person comes in and looks at me and asks me to stand up, do a little twirl, and says, "Yeah, just looking at you, I can definitely tell you were supposed to be born a woman. Your body
Wow.
figure is that of a woman." And I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, someone who at the time was thinking, okay, someone who has more knowledge than I do,
Right.
obviously should definitely know, especially if they transition for a long time. I can't even tell.
Mm.
Obviously, now looking back, I don't even think that's appropriate for a doctor to allow someone else in and do that, especially because that person was just an activist and worked within the medical office there as an activist for other transgenders.
Mm.
So I continued my transition. So November 2016 is when I finally took hormones. It went well. Few months later, I in April of the next year, 2017, I got my legal name change. I got all my gender markers changed. So I was now in the state of California a legally recognized female with a female name and everything. That went well, had no issues. 7 months later, I went in to see another therapist through the medical clinic because I was thinking about surgery.
Mm.
And obviously, I wanted to look as feminine as possible. So, talking to this therapist or medical professional, I don't remember exactly what he was. He says he can get me my letters to approve for surgery. And it was during that session that he got me approved. I had only I told him I definitely want to get bottom surgery, but I didn't want to get it then
Mm.
because the thing is that before I did anything back when I first went to see a therapist, I told myself I want to wait 5 years before I get implants, 10 years before I get bottom surgery.
Mhm.
So, and
From
for
the
those
time that you started the estrogen,
hormones,
or
yes, from when I started hormones.
gotcha. And did you have any side effects from how did the estrogen or the hormones make you feel?
So the hormones did what their job was supposed to do. They made my skin softer. I didn't really have much of a beard, so it also made the hairs on my face and all over my body less than what they normally were.
Mm-hmm.
I obviously developed breast implant, not developed breast implants. I developed breast tissue.
Gotcha.
I was gonna say, well, I did not know. Wow, that's new for me.
A
Breast
modern
implants.
marvel.
eh, So they did what they were supposed to do. I didn't really have any side effects until I think a couple years later when I realized that I had made a mistake. But I want to go back to what I was saying with that other therapist. So what he was, so I had told him I obviously want to get implants. I want to get a bottom surgery. For those who don't know what that is penile inversion and creating a neo vagina from my penis. But I told him I want to wait on that honestly at least 10 years. So that was my original plan.
Mhm.
10 years for bottom surgery, 5 years for top, and I wasn't sure when I wanted to get my face done, but it was somewhere in between that timeline. Um, I thought he just signed me for or approved me for implants. Unknowingly, he approved me for both breast implants and penile inversion, and I say that because a few weeks later in the mail, I got two letters of approval from my insurance, one for breast implants and one for penile inversion and creating a neo vagina.
Mm. So
Uh,
insurance is going to pay for the whole procedures.
that is correct. My insurance in California covered everything.
Okay.
Um, when I looked at the letters, I knew what the implants was for, but I was looking at the bottom of surgery and I was like, okay, what's this? I don't even know what this is. So I asked a few friends. It's like, hey, you want to read this with me? Because I don't know what this is, and I only asked for one letter unless they made a mistake and sent two, but under two different doctors. And then after we looked a little into it, it was like we realized, oh, it's bottom surgery, removal of my genitals, and I was like, I didn't ask for this. So I just ignored the letter and I just left it there. I got one final letter in the mail saying, hey, don't forget you have this surgery. But I ignored that one as well.
Mm.
Um, I eventually got the implants, and that was May of 2018. Um, everything went well, honestly, with that. And that's probably because at the time of the implants, I was still on some heavy painkillers because obviously it's surgery and
Right.
you're going to need painkillers to deal with all the pain. By the time the painkillers wore off, I didn't really have any pain. And I was just, I guess I'd call it a honeymoon phase of getting the implants looking more feminine to the outside world because now I have breast. And obviously, you wouldn't expect a man to have breasts as big as I got them. And no, they weren't comically huge as most people are going to think, but they were somewhat big just because the doctor said I had to get them a little bit bigger than I would have normally wanted just because the way that he did it is put it under the muscle of my tissue
Mm.
so it can look as normal-ish as possible as normal breasts.
Mhm.
It didn't. Uh, if you're if you have a keen eye, you can tell they were implants.
Mm.
So, but at the same time of after surgery, I also had a friend's graduation, so I wasn't really concerned about, or I wasn't thinking about anything. It was just more of a couple of things are happening in my life. These are all good moments, so I wanted to enjoy everything. It wasn't after 3 months after the implants that the way I just explained is I got slapped in the face by reality.
Mm.
And the reason why I say I got slapped is because, well, reality says that I'm a man. I was born a man and I'm gonna die a man. And I just woke even though I woke up that day, I don't recall which day, but I
Mhm.
just woke up one day realizing, what am I doing to myself?
Mm.
What am I doing? And but I will also say before that, before I saw the therapist, which also goes in with the 5 and the 10 year plan that I had for surgeries. My conscience had told me, hey, this not might not be the right choice for you.
Mm.
Let's not go as quickly as we would love to, because if I go too fast, obviously I'm gonna harm myself. So
Was there any like one event that kind of, I've talked to a couple of detransitioners where they maybe they Googled something, they found something like, wait a second, I didn't consider this before. And that's kind of what kind of got their epiphany. Or so was there any one event, or you just kind of came to, I guess?
I do apologize. The audio went out on you for a few seconds. Can you repeat that?
Yeah, of course. Was there any sort of event that caused your epiphany, something you saw online maybe, or was this just something that kind of came to you?
No, it just came to me. Like I said, it's at the time I was almost 3 years into the transition, and no, wait, no, I was almost 2 years into my transition, not 3 years. Sorry.
That's okay.
So, but before I had started anything, I had already thought of the possibility I could be wrong.
Hmm.
So
But
I
you were
think it was,
encouraged to move ahead regardless
yeah,
of those doubts.
yeah. But the
Um,
doubts, I don't think I ever mentioned them to
oh,
anyone.
okay.
They were just my own thoughts, my conscience. But I was always approved by everyone around me. No
What
one
about
gave
your
me.
parents and family during
By
your?
the time I transitioned, I had moved out. I didn't want to be with them because those around me said, "Well, your family's toxic." It's a
Mhm.
stereotypical thing that they always tell anyone who claims to be trans. Your family's toxic. They hate you. They're transphobic. They're not gonna love you. Like, the standard thing, what they normally say. So I believed it, and I moved out, and my brain just died.
It's okay. It's a lot of information, and you're recounting a pretty intense time in your life. So that's okay. Take your time.
What was I saying right before the?
You were talking.
Okay, surgery. Let me see.
We were talking about how you kind of woke up to the idea that you were doing
Yeah,
something wrong, but you've never really voiced that to anyone, but
yeah.
you were supported through your transition.
So yeah, so as much as I would love to have said it, it just came out of nowhere. It was actually a buildup of time.
Mm,
My conscience had already known, but I was not willing to face reality. So that's why I just say I woke up one day and got slapped in the face by reality, and I just had to look at myself as like, what am I doing to myself? I'm a man.
mm,
I've got long hair. I got breast implants. I look somewhat like a woman, but I'm not gonna be a woman. Just even if I get the full surgery, I'm never gonna be a woman. Yes, I can live life as a woman, quote unquote woman, but I would never experience life to the full extent of what a woman actually is. I was just gonna be a decoy woman, a
mm,
caricature, whatever you want to call it, but anything but a real woman. I was just fake.
mm.
It was just going to be a man with so much plastic surgery just to mimic a woman. And I think once I realized that, I had to accept reality, and it took me a while to actually accept it. But, and I say that because even though I wanted to reverse everything right away, it, it took a while to finally accept it because I also became a heavy alcoholic,
Mm.
and I just had to deal with some of the pain and the fact that I was making mistakes. By the time I was seeking for help, I was still taking hormones and everything. It wasn't until a few more months later I was like, okay, I'm done with all the hormones, and that was in April of 2019. So I think it was 4 months after surgery. And this is still 2018. I had by then I had gone to my doctor, say, hey, I think I made a mistake. um what can I do to see if I can reverse any of this? Because my doctor had done, I think, 20 or 25 years with transgender patients, but to him he's never had anyone reverse anything.
Oh,
He didn't know. And and So I think he said I had to go back to the therapist who signed me off on this, and so I went to her and I said, "Hey, I think I might have made a mistake. What's the process of potentially detransitioning?" Well, it did not go well that day. Um, so she told me that I don't need to detransition. Everything that I'm feeling right now is just because I just had surgery and my body's recovering, and I got her notes on that day, for that day, and it just says that I have always been withholding childhood trauma, and that was actually the reason why they were just all coming up now, a few months after I had surgery, while I'm still recovering. And I was like, I didn't say anything to her, but after I left her office, I'm just like, what the is she on about? And she tried to dismiss my feelings, my experience. What I'm trying to say, like, hey, I might have made a mistake. What's the way to reverse this? So she obviously ignored what I wanted to do, which by then I was no longer within the LGBT community. I had fallout a few months prior. So I wasn't really surprised that I was being left to the street by myself. And even though that was my first experience, it was the next therapist that made me realize that this is all insanity. Because she obviously affirmed my transition as a woman right away, but she dismissed my thoughts of returning to being a man again.
Mhm.
So I went after that session. I think I waited a few weeks because I didn't want to make it sound like it was that session that, like, okay, you're crazy. Um, I waited a bit and I told her, hey, I do appreciate, but unfortunately my scheduling. I just got another job and the scheduling is so bad. I don't think I can see you anymore. I lied. I'm gonna have to double check the notes what I had said, but it was something around scheduling that prevented me.
Mhm.
So a few months later, I try to find a new therapist and I get a new one. I get a new therapist through my doctor, and I tell him, "Hey, doc, so my therapist couldn't help me. Do you guys have a therapist here at this clinic that I can talk to?" He said, "Yeah, we have one. Let me submit a request for you to see him." And I go see him, and I think by then I think he was gonna help me.
Mhm.
Later, finding out that he was useless. I- if not useless, worse than the first one.
Mm.
So the reason why I say that is because in the time that I was waiting, um, an idea came to my mind saying that at the time, if you were transgender, you cannot join the military if you were actively transgender, but you could join if you reversed everything. So I had gone to the army and I said, "Hey, what would I need to join?" I spoke to a recruiter and they said, and I told them I'm actually transgender. So what do I need to do? She said one of two things: either you can reverse what you're doing and enroll as a man, or finish the surgery and enroll as a woman.
Mm.
I said I'll do the first option, just because that's what I'd rather do.
Mhm.
So I said, let me. I need to know. I know I have to get a therapist to sign off on this. So let me go and work that out. So and the recruiter was willing to work with me and wait. So I go see then a therapist and I tell him, hey, I'm thinking about detransitioning. I also want to join the military, but they're telling me the only option I have is to detransition. I obviously withheld the information that I need to get the other option, which is completely get the surgery in, because I
Right.
knew I didn't want to get it by then. By
Right.
then, I had realized, okay, I'm making a mistake. He was not helpful. He would not let me detransition.
Mm.
No, because at the time I had recently had failed the police academy, and I was in communication with the chief of police of my local police department on eventually joining his department. This therapist said it's easier for me to join the police force as a trans woman because the chief had already known me and he would have loved to have me on the force compared to join the military, reverse everything, and eventually come back a few years later and have to redo everything. And I told him, if that's the only option I have, I don't mind going through the military if I have to wait. Obviously, he didn't agree with that, and his notes that I also have received have said that I have not should have not been very cavalier with my gender in regards to detransition because I don't know the full side effects and how
Hmm.
dangerous it could be to my body. And I'm just like, when I when I finally got those notes and I was like, okay, what the hell are you saying? And you're biased as hell. Because I realized quickly into his sessions, okay, he's biased. He doesn't want me to reverse anything. He wants me to be a transgender woman, even though I made it. I believe I made enough points like, hey, I made a mistake. Can I get some actual help?
Right. That should be all that you have to say, I feel like. I feel
Uh,
like you shouldn't have to give, you can say, I made a mistake. I need help reversing this. And someone should hear you. That should be enough, right?
you would assume that, but sadly not in California, where
Wow.
they say no, no, they only want you to transition.
Hmm. And then after that, it was hard to find someone. I want to jump ahead just a tiny bit because we're talking on this, but um, did you finally find someone who would listen to you and help you?
Yes.
And
So
then did insurance pay for that the same way it paid for you to transition?
so that's actually a funny story, and I'm actually kind of done with that second therapist because he was useless. Personally, I'd say he was way worse than the first one.
Yeah, I'd
But
say anyone that's not listening to you.
yeah, so after I realized he would not help me, I was looking on the internet trying to figure out. And then one day when I was working, I get a notification of a video that was just dropped from someone that I was following at the time, and it was they did an interview with a detransitioner. I didn't know what that was at the time, so I looked at the video, and the person that was being interviewed was a gentleman by the name of Walt Heyer. I'm not sure if you know who that is.
Mm-hmm. Isn't
So I
he's pretty elderly now, yes?
He's 82 years
Yeah.
old. He transitioned in 1980. 1983 is when he
Mm-hmm.
transitioned. 1990 is when he detransitioned. So I had when I found out who he was, I started. I think I spent a couple of weeks just looking at all his videos, trying to get as much as information as I could on detransitioners and him. And eventually, I found out that he had a website. I reached out to him through email and I said, "Hi, my name is Abel Garcia. I'm a transgender woman, and I think I made a mistake. Can you help me?"
Wow.
He said yes, he could help me, and we started communicating a bit. And I told him I just had two situations with two therapists who would not help me detransition. This was in Southern California. He eventually said, when I told him where I lived, he
Mhm.
said, "Okay, I have a friend who works in that area as a therapist. Here's his name, and I don't know where he works, but if you find him, tell him I sent you."
Mm-hmm.
So eventually, I found him. Took multiple tries to finally get him as a therapist because he was always busy. Eventually, he gave me a few minutes to talk to him before becoming a patient. I said, "Hey, my name is Abel Garcia. I am a transgender woman. I was sent to you by your friend Walt Heyer, so I can detransition." Obviously, after he heard that, he said, "Okay, I'll take you as a patient." So I see him. I think it was mid to late 2019 is when I started seeing him, and that's when I realized, okay, so this is actually someone who's willing to help me. I eventually cut off my ties with the last therapist,
Mm-hmm.
and I told him again the same lie, or I think I lied to him. I think I don't recall exactly what I said. It was either scheduling issue or
Sure.
I no longer have the thoughts of detransitioning.
Hmm.
It was one of those two. More likely the latter, but that's off topic. And I'm going long into this debate, this debacle. But after I see this final therapist, because he was my last therapist before I left California, he told me everything that we're gonna do is of my own choice. Nothing that we say in here is because of him,
Mm.
because the state of California, if they catch wind of what he's doing, would consider it conversion therapy.
Wow.
So we were walking on a lot of eggshells when I saw him.
Mm.
Obviously, insurance did not cover the first few months with therapy with him because he did not accept my insurance, but eventually he was in the process of getting it, and I
Mm.
got it. And I got it approved to see him. I actually just found out that he actually was charging almost $200 per session, and the insurance would only pay about 75% of it.
Mm.
So, or about, they wouldn't even pay the full amount. And I didn't even know that till like a few weeks ago. So I'm just like, wow, they kind of ripped him off. But the everything went well with him. The insurance did not. So because this was actually also during COVID-19 in California, we had so many lockdowns.
Yeah.
We eventually found out that we needed 2 medical professionals to sign off on me, so I can transition, which was news to me because prior to that, everything was so easy. Um, but when we finally got that information, I started to look for another medical professional. I needed either a therapist or psychologist or a psychiatrist. I can't remember which one's which. But eventually, I did find another medical professional to sign off on me. He didn't really want to see me because, again, COVID-19, and he did not
Mhm.
want to take any new patients just because he
Yeah.
was scared
And this was to sign off to have the reversal
to
of
have the
the,
implants removed.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, because you in California you need. I don't know if it's just in general you to do any type of transgender or detransition surgery, but you need 2 medical professionals to sign off. I assumed it was just one because I only had one medical professional sign off on me the entire time for the implants.
Sure. To go. Yeah.
But unless they had another one who already had everything ready as soon as the first one approved it, which is what I'm assuming is the case.
Hmm.
So eventually, I bugged the hell out of this medical professional and his team, saying, "Hey, I really need to see him. You're the only one that's in the area that my insurance covers. I'm a transgender woman. I think I made a mistake, and no one is willing to see me. I just want help to reverse what I've done and become a man again." So eventually, I got to see this other medical professional, and he said, "Okay, I'll take care of the client." I did record show 2 sessions with him, and the second one is where he signed off on it. He had multiple questions, and eventually I gave him the answer that he wanted, which I made a mistake. And
Hmm.
and once I got that letter from him, I provided that to my therapist. My therapist wrote his letter, submitted everything to the insurance, and I thought that was going to be it. That all we needed were those 2 letters, and I would set up an appointment with a doctor to remove my implant. Well, unfortunately, that's not what happened. Um, the insurance sent me a letter saying, "Unfortunately, we have denied your request for surgery because we do not see it
Um,
medically necessary for you to have the implants removed." And I'm just like, "What the hell?" I obviously tell my
oh,
therapist next time I see
no.
him, which I think was which was the following week after I got that letter of denial. So he tells me, "What can we do?" I said, I know I can call and file a petition to challenge their claim or their decision." but that was going to take a while. Normally it's 30 days for them to reply. I call them, I say, hey, I'm transgender, and I don't recall exactly what I said, but it was under the fact that I made a mistake and I need this reversed. 30 days later, they sent me a letter, and I get the letter of approval saying that their decision has been overturned and they will be covering the surgery, which was good news because
Yeah.
I was in because I didn't know how much it was going to cost. My therapist and I, we were already looking at options of how much is this going to cost out of hand, and who knows what it would cost.
Yeah.
So, but luckily we did get the approval letter. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry for the yawning.
It's okay.
um, but eventually, we like I said, we did get the letter of approval. I was told who the surgeon was going to be, and I looked at the name and said, "Why does this surgeon look so familiar?" And I was like, I didn't realize that it didn't take it took a minute after, but eventually I realized the surgeon who was removing the implants was the same surgeon who gave them to me.
Oh.
Yeah, so he was kind of surprised to see me when I came in, and I said, "Look, doc, I made a mistake, honestly, and I want them removed." And we talked that in the first session, and he says, "If that's what you want, I'll gladly remove them. That's not an issue." We think I saw him for a few times, and eventually we got surgery date for December 3rd of 2020. I go in for surgery, I get the implants removed. And before we even did surgery, I asked, so are you going to remove everything completely and fix my chest that same session? He says, no, he can't do that. The reason was because there was so much excess skin. I needed, he wanted me to lose as much as weight as I could because that would have meant less work for him, and it would have it looks better, obviously, if it's done in 2 sessions instead of 1, just because it's I guess it's less healing, less work for my body to deal with.
Yeah.
So I said that's fine. So I get the implants removed, but I was left with excess skin on my chest. So after that, I got all my documents changed, and that took forever as well. Because I knew I was gonna have surgery in December, I thought, and I had 2 weeks off for work to recover and get everything changed. I thought I could get a court order in that time, and I submitted the paperwork in October.
And that's to get your name changed back and
My
your
name changed and all my documents back to being male.
Gotcha.
So I submitted all the paperwork to the court system in October, 2 months before surgery, and they wanted me to pay for the court fees and everything. And I was like, and I'm in my head like, the hell, I didn't pay for the first time. It's California; they cover everything for if it's transgender related.
Right.
And I
Except
said,
for if you're going back.
which on the spot I say, well, I'm actually transgender, so why do I need to pay for this? I was so I don't pay for this. He says, oh, you're trans. Oh, never mind. Fees are waived. Like,
Wow.
okay. And I was like, perfect. And obviously, I didn't say anything to them, but in my head, I'm just like, all right, that worked.
Yeah.
So I got. They said that my documents would be ready in December, and I called them a week before, like, hey, this is Abel Garcia. Well, obviously, I wasn't using my name wasn't Abel; it was something else, which I'm not gonna say.
That's okay.
It said, "Hey, this is Abel Garcia. I'm just calling because you guys said my paperwork would be ready in about a week. I don't know if it's a court hearing or what's going on." And well, we don't have anything on file. And I was like, "What do you mean? I submitted all the paperwork back in October." I say, "Well, call us back in a couple days and we'll see what's going on." I call, and that was a whole debacle. I spent like 5 different. I went to the courthouse 5 different times, and I think they knew who I was by then. I think it was by the second or third time. They're like, "Oh, great, she's coming back again. What the hell is she? We told her we don't have them yet." Eventually, the last time I heard was, "Yeah, they're finally on the judge's desk, so now we just wait." And I honestly had forgotten about it because I had surgery, and I was kind of done with it. eventually in January, I got a letter from the courthouse saying, "Congratulations, it's been approved and your name and everything has been changed from your old name to your real name, to your current name back to your old name." It's like perfect.
Was it a big
So,
sigh of relief for you?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I was finally happy when that happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I I went to the DMV. I went to the Social Security. Social Security was apparently closed due to COVID, and that made it. And I didn't even realize it was closed. I woke up a couple hours in advance that the day I was going to the courthouse, or I'm sorry, Social Security, and that's when I realized. I think it was like half an hour into when they were supposed to open. It's like, what the hell's going on? Why didn't it open? And I noticed, oh, they are not open. So I had called and said, "Yeah, we're not taking anyone inside because of COVID, and so you have
Um,
to mail us everything." I said, "Okay, that's fine. I can mail everything." And when I mailed them, apparently there was some document that was missing, so they sent everything back, or something was missing. I don't
mhm.
recall. So I had to deal with that. I think it took like 4 to 6 months after I got my court order, so I can finally change all my documents back. Even though I was presenting as a man again, I was still legally female, and that was embarrassing as hell. So I don't recall exactly when, but it was at least what was it, 2021. I had all my documents eventually changed back.
Hmm. So a very long process from the time that you decided that you had made a mistake to getting your surgery, stopping the drugs, and getting your legal name back and affairs in order. Really, much longer than the reverse.
That is correct,
Yeah.
and because they had only just removed the implants, and I still had breast tissue, I'd, eh, I, I guess you can call it gynecomastia. For those who
Mm.
don't know what that means, it just means man breast, man boobs,
Hmm.
however you want to call
Hmm.
it. So I had to do one more surgery, and in February of this year, I went back in under the knife and got that recovered and got that done.
What can people do to better support now that you've been through this experience? What can people do to better support folks who are going through this? Maybe we could use your parent. Are you in a better relationship with your parents now? What can parents do to support their children? Um,
Sure. So with my father, I have a better relationship with him. It's, we both admitted that we were both wrong. Him with the prostitute, me doing what I did.
mhm.
My mother and I are in a bit of a rocky relationship now.
So what would you say then to other parents maybe who have kids, or what would you say to kids who think that they need to transition? What would be your message to them?
I would say to the parents, obviously, don't let your children transition. Don't let them do anything. But if your child is an adult, sadly, you can't do anything.
Yeah.
Just be patient. I know firsthand that people your children are going to associate with are going to tell them that you're terrible people, that you're
Mm.
transphobic, you don't love them, and I've actually had the opportunity to speak to so many parents, and the what I get from them is they actually do love their children. Well, they actually do love their children. They
Yeah.
care for them, and they're very worried because they don't know what's going on. Because a lot of these parents, honestly, they're so busy nowadays, especially with everything that's going on. They're so busy working, they don't have time to look at their kids on what they're doing, who they associate with, and what they're doing, especially with the how prominent the internet is.
Mhm.
Because
And
the
now they're
internet,
fighting schools too, right? Like some schools are transitioning children without the parents' knowledge or consent, which
that
is
is
very
good.
scary.
That is true. There are a lot of schools all over the US that have what is called a transition closet, I don't remember what it's called precisely, but it's mostly just a closet where they have clothes for both male and females.
Mhm.
I think for the women, they have what is considered a binder. For those who don't know what that
Yeah.
is, it just compresses your chest, almost like a corset, but just for the breast only, just to make
Mhm.
them appear flat.
Mhm.
And this teachers do this without the parents' consent or approval or knowledge to that for that matter.
Yeah.
all while the school approves of it because the schools are all pro transitioning children and ignoring parental consent.
Hmm. So, what would you say to someone who maybe in the spot that you were a few years ago, someone who has bought the lie of the gender industry and is now struggling or thinking about trying to come back and accept their true self? What would any
So
words
I
of
would
wisdom for
say
them?
to anyone who is currently transitioning or wants to do it, I would say don't do this, please. You're gonna I know in the beginning you're gonna think this is actually very helpful, especially with all these honeymoon phases with the
Mm,
medication surgeries and the fact that you're gonna get love bombed by all these activists and those who and their allies. They're gonna tell you this is the right choice. This is who you truly are. This is how you were supposed to be born, which
mhm,
they're lying to you. I'm sorry to say it. The truth is hard, but I can confirm that with all the people who I have personally spoken with that these medication, these surgeries are going to be more harmful. Just for an example, there is one young man in the UK who has gotten the full bottom surgery. He only feels pain
mm.
when he does anything regarding to what he's done to himself.
Yeah.
There's an
Do you have any side
Mhm.
effects from having the surgery and then having it reversed?
Yes, sadly I do. So my chest is completely numb on some parts, so if you wanted to stab me in the chest, I probably wouldn't even feel it. Um Obviously my genitals have atrophied.
Mm, mhm.
So for those who don't know what that means, it just means that they are very, very, very emphasis on very small.
Yeah. Do you worry about your fertility and if you want
That
to have
is
a
my main
family?
issue. I don't
Yeah.
even know, and I'm very scared to get that tested.
Yeah.
Obviously, due to the atrophy of my genitals, I have an issue of using the restroom.
Mm,
It takes me forever to go, and even when I feel like I've completely emptied my bladder, I will still be having some urine within I'd say 30 seconds after I'm done.
mhm.
Still come out, and obviously my clothes will smell like urine as well. Um, Now I would say it was either before or after, more than likely after surgery. I realized I had some shaking on the left half of my body, but at the time I didn't know what that was. Recently, because I've been able to keep a more eye on it, I noticed that the left half of my body, mostly my arm, it shakes on its own. My face has started to do it on its own as well.
Mm,
I've spoken to some people and I have yet to get this checked out, but I have more than likely have developed MS. I don't know if you or your viewers know what that is, but and I'm gonna butcher it, but it's called multiple
Sclerosis. Yeah.
sclerosis. Yes. And I've spoken to other people, and they say that's pretty odd because it normally doesn't happen to men. It's more of something affects that women. But because I was on estrogen for about 2.5 years, I they're not that surprised that it might have developed it with me.
Mm, wow. Wow. Do you have hope for this industry crumbling? Do you think that we're close with Tavistock closing, lawsuits being made? Do you think that there's there's hope? I'd like to end on a hopeful note, but maybe you don't.
Well, yes, I have a hopeful note. And I say that because obviously you just said the Tavistock is being shut down, and so they're no longer going to be doing it there. But fortunately, they will be doing it in other clinics.
Yeah. Yeah.
But apparently, the Tavistock is being sued by 1,000 families, which is good because if they all win their cases, that's going to have some legal precedent.
Hmm.
I know the Tavistock already lost to one case, but a higher court ruled in the favor of Tavistock, which
Yeah.
is Carabel versus Tavistock, if I remember
Hmm.
correctly.
Yeah.
I know there are some people here in the US that are thinking of suing. Me personally, I cannot sue anymore. I've unfortunately passed statute of limitations, which for me was 3 years in California.
Only 3 years. Wow.
3 years once I start the process for any medical procedure, or 1 year when I realize I make the mistake.
Wow.
Realized the mistake in 2018. I started the process in 2016. They both ended in 2019.
Yeah.
So I'm out of luck, honestly.
But you're sharing your story and you're talking to others. I just want to plug again that you are on Twitter and Instagram. And I know that you, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe I saw where you are, you keep your messages open and active. So if anyone wants to reach out, similar to how Walt reached out and helped you, that people can message you directly, whether that's parents who might have a child who's questioning their identity, or if that's people themselves who have transitioned or detransitioned. Is that right?
Yes, so because I can only upload, I can either do very short tweets on
Mm-hmm.
Twitter. I decided to do a video, so my main thing on Twitter, and this goes for everything on YouTube, on Instagram, wherever I'm on. If you're a parent or you're a relative and you have someone in your family who is currently transitioning, you need someone to talk to, you are more than welcome to message me on
Mm-hmm.
Twitter, Instagram with a direct message, leave a comment on YouTube. I will direct you to send me a message to social media, or you're more than welcome to send me an email detailing what's going on with your situation. This also goes to those who are currently transitioning, but I mostly did that because I noticed a lot of detransitioners are being attacked on social media,
Yeah.
because obviously all these activists, these I don't even consider medical professionals who do this actual doctors. I just consider them Frankenstein doctors. And that's being nice, because the other option I have is referring to them of a German doctor during a certain area that the Germans do
Yeah.
not like. I think you might have an idea who I'm referring to. I hope your
Yeah.
viewers either know exactly who I'm referring to, or if not,
Yeah.
just
They're
look up.
experimenting wrongly on kids, really targeting,
Mhm.
and not just kids, adults too. But I,
They are targeting children who know nothing, young
yeah.
adults who are lost, or
Mm-hmm.
those who might be autistic, or in the possible case of homosexuality, who do not like their own homosexuality. There are so many reasons, and they are playing God with
Yeah.
us.
Yeah. Well, I'd love to have you back sometime and we can talk about this industry a little bit more. And now that you've shared your story, kind of some more insights that you have about it. But I believe we are close to out of time today. And it has been an absolute privilege and an honor for you to come on to Venus Rising. And I appreciate that you had the courage to share your story with us. So thank you for joining me today, Abel.
Well, thank you very much, and it was a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. I'd like to again remind listeners to follow you on Twitter and Instagram with the handle at official Abel G, ABELG. Abel, like I said, makes himself available. So please go check him out there and follow him. You can also find Abel on YouTube as well. I'd like to thank each and every one of our listeners and subscribers for tuning in. Our goal, as ever, is to create conversation, facilitate discussion, and encourage you to think beyond the masses.